Behind the glitz of the Grammys and the deafening screams of sold-out stadiums lies a grueling reality that would shatter any average spirit. We've seen the sweat on stage, but what happened in those lonely practice rooms at 4 a.m. when the world was asleep? Bang Si-hyuk, the mastermind behind Big Hit, has finally pulled back the curtain on the true grit of the world's biggest boy band. Who among the 7 legends actually pushed the hardest? Was it the natural talent or the restless dreamer? Get ready to question everything you thought you knew about your idols. Is the hardest worker really who you think it is, or has the real grind king been hiding in plain sight? Let's find out. Number 7. Jin, the relentless underdog, from zero to global icon. Starting our countdown at number 7 is the man who truly embodies the phrase, "hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard." The eldest brother and the emotional anchor of the group, Kim Seok-jin. When Bang Si-hyuk first scouted Jin, he didn't see a seasoned dancer or a trained vocalist. He saw a young university student majoring in acting who possessed a striking face but virtually zero musical background. Imagine the sheer, paralyzing pressure of being dropped into a lineup of underground rap prodigies like RM and Suga and dance machines like J-Hop. Bang PD has often reflected on those early dark days of Big Hit, recalling how Jin was essentially starting from a negative baseline compared to the others. While the younger members had spent years honing their craft in dance academies or the underground hip-hop scene, Jin had to learn how to even stand on a stage. The narrative we often see is the worldwide handsome persona, the guy who cracks dad jokes and blows kisses to the camera. But behind that mask of effortless confidence lies a history of grueling, bone-shaking labor that would have made a lesser man quit within weeks. Bang Si-hyuk has shared stories of walking into the old, cramped practice rooms at 3 a.m., only to find Jin still there, the lights flickering, as he repeated a single dance step hundreds of times until his legs literally trembled with exhaustion. He wasn't naturally flexible. His body didn't understand rhythm the way the others did, which meant he had to intellectualize every single movement, breaking down choreography into mathematical sequences just to keep up. There were nights when the frustration became so heavy you could almost feel it in the air, yet Jin never let that bitterness seep into his performance. Bang PD noted that Jin's work ethic was scary because it was so quiet and consistent. He wasn't the type to brag about his extra hours. He would just show up the next day and nail the move he failed at the day before. Think back to the Awake era. This was a turning point where Jin's internal struggle was laid bare for the world to see. The lyrics, "Maybe I can never fly," weren't just poetic metaphors. They were a raw reflection of his fear that no matter how hard he worked, he might never catch up to the natural-born geniuses surrounding him. But instead of letting that fear paralyze him, he used it as fuel. He spent thousands of hours with vocal coaches, pushing his range higher and higher until he developed that signature silver voice that now pierces the hearts of millions. His evolution from the breathy, uncertain vocals in No More Dream to the soul-shattering high notes in Epiphany and The Astronaut is a journey of pure grit. Bang Si-hyuk recalls that Jin's dedication actually set a standard for the rest of the group. When the younger members saw their Hyung working that hard despite being the oldest, they had no choice but to push themselves even further. There's a specific memory from the Wings tour rehearsals where Jin was dealing with a significant leg injury, yet he refused to simplify his movements, practicing in the wings of the stage until the very last second before the curtains rose. This wasn't about vanity, it was about a deep-seated sense of responsibility to the fans and to the 6 brothers he essentially helped raise. He sacrificed his sleep, his physical comfort, and his own ego to become the pillar BTS needed. The atmospheric tension of those early years, the smell of sweat in the unventilated basement, the cold ramen eaten in haste, and the sound of Jin's sneakers squeaking against the floor long after the sun had gone down, is the foundation upon which his current success is built. He proved to Bang PD and the entire industry that talent is often just a word for people who haven't seen the hidden hours of practice. Jin's story is a psychological masterclass in resilience. He chose to be the visual not because it was the easy path, but because he knew he had to work twice as hard to prove he was more than just a pretty face. Every time you see him hit a perfect choreographic formation or sustain a difficult belt, you're seeing the result of a decade of relentless, punishing self-discipline. Si-hyuk believes that without Jin's specific brand of unseen effort, the group's dynamic would have crumbled under the weight of their early failures. He is the living proof that you can redefine your destiny through sheer force of will. So, while he takes the number 7 spot, don't let the ranking fool you. In the world of pure, unadulterated grind, Si-hyuk Jin is a titan who paved his own road to the stars. Does it make you wonder what kind of mental strength it takes to stay positive when you're the one starting from the very bottom? How many of us would have the courage to stay in a room where we feel like the least talented person just to prove that we belong? Jin didn't just survive that environment, he conquered it, and that's why Bang PD considers his journey one of the most miraculous transformations in K-pop history. He is the silent mountain of BTS, immovable and constantly growing, reminding us that the slowest rise often leads to the highest peak.
Number 6. The Hidden Prodigy, breaking the soul of a perfectionist. Coming in at number 6 is the man whose very existence was once kept a secret from the world, the soulful baritone and the master of stage presence, taehyung. To the casual observer, V might seem like he was born for the spotlight, a natural-born genius who moves with an effortless, feline grace. But Bang Si-hyuk remembers a very different story, one defined by the crushing weight of being the hidden member. Imagine the psychological toll of practicing for years, pouring your blood, sweat, and tears into a dream, yet being told you have to stay out of the vlogs and away from the cameras while your 6 brothers are already building a connection with the fans. Bang PD has often reflected on how this period could have broken anyone else, but for Taehyung, it became the crucible that forged his legendary work ethic. He wasn't just working to get better, he was working to prove he deserved to be seen. In those early years, V wasn't considered a dancer by industry standards. He had the passion, but his movements were raw and unrefined compared to the precision of the dance line. Bang Si-hyuk recalls watching V spend countless hours in front of the mirrors, not just practicing the steps, but obsessing over the soul of the movement. While others focused on the angle of their arms, V was studying how a single flicker of an eyelid or a slight tilt of the head could change the entire emotion of a performance. This wasn't natural talent, it was a calculated, exhaustive study of human expression. He would record himself thousands of times, analyzing every frame with a level of self-criticism that was almost painful to witness. There were nights when the staff would find him asleep on the cold floor of the practice room, clutching a tablet filled with performance notes. Bang PD noted that V's transformation into one of the most respected dancers in the industry, culminating in his official induction into the dance line during the Singularity era, is one of the greatest grind stories in big hit history. That solo performance, which looks so fluid and easy, was actually the result of months of agonizing practice, where V pushed his body to mimic the fluidity of contemporary dance, a style completely foreign to his hip-hop roots. But it wasn't just about the dancing, it was about the voice. Taehyung's deep, soulful growl didn't just happen. Bang Si-hyuk recalls how V struggled to find his place in a group that initially leaned heavily toward high-pitched pop and aggressive rap. He had to work twice as hard to adapt his unique frequency to fit the group's sound without losing his identity. He spent years exploring the nuances of jazz and soul on his own time, bringing that sophistication back to BTS's music. Bang PD remembers V coming to him with his first compositions, nervous but determined, showing a side of himself that was deeply reflective and hard-working beyond anyone's expectations. He didn't just want to be a singer, he wanted to be a creator. The detail in his work is staggering, from the way he meticulously layered the harmonies in blue and gray to the way he practiced his saxophone for years before even debuting. There's a specific memory from the Blood, Sweat, and Tears era where V's dedication to the fallen angel concept was so intense that he stayed in character even when the cameras were off, constantly refining his gestures to ensure every second of his screen time was perfect. This level of immersion isn't something you're born with, it's a choice you make every single day. Bang Si-hyuk has said that V's greatest strength is his ability to hide the work behind the art, making the audience believe it's all natural, when in reality it's the result of a man who refuses to settle for anything less than perfection. He took the pain of being the hidden member and turned it into a drive that has made him an irreplaceable icon. Even when he was exhausted, even when the idol lifestyle felt like a heavy cloak, V would be the one to stay behind and ask for one more take just to see if he could find a more honest way to deliver a line. This is the irony of Kim Taehyung. The man the world thinks is a natural is actually one of the most meticulous, labor-intensive artists Bang PD has ever managed. He didn't just join BTS, he carved his name into its history through sheer, unyielding perseverance. Every time you see that piercing gaze on stage, remember it was forged in the silence of being the boy who wasn't allowed to be seen, working in the shadows until he became the brightest light of all. Doesn't it make you wonder how much more there is to a person than what the camera captures? How many hidden hours have you put into your own dreams when no one was watching? V's journey at number 6 is a powerful reminder that the most beautiful flowers often grow from the hardest soil, and his silent grind is what truly makes him a masterpiece in motion.
Number 5. RM. The Weight of the Crown. Turning words into a global movement. At number 5, we dive into the life of the man who started it all, the foundation upon which the entire BTS empire was built, Kim Namjoon. When Bang Si-hyuk first encountered a teenage Namjoon in the underground hip-hop scene, he didn't just see a rapper, he saw a philosopher with a restless mind and a hunger that was almost frightening. But the journey from Runch Ronda to the leader of a global phenomenon wasn't a smooth ascent. It was a punishing, decade-long marathon of mental and physical transformation that Bang PD describes as monumental. Imagine being a 17-year-old lyrical genius who has never danced a day in his life, suddenly thrust into a world where your worth is measured by the precision of your footwork and the sharpness of your angles. In the early days of Big Hit's basement studio, RM wasn't the cool leader we see today. He was a young man struggling to control a body that felt alien to him. Bang Si-hyuk vividly recalls the God of Destruction era, which wasn't just a funny nickname for breaking things. It was a reflection of RM's internal frustration as he battled his own lack of natural coordination. While members like Jimin or J-Hope could pick up a routine in an hour, Namjoon would stay back for 5, 6, 7 hours, his tall frame drenched in sweat, repeating a single transition until his muscles memorized what his brain couldn't quite grasp. Bang PD remembers walking past the practice room at 4 a.m. and seeing Namjoon staring at the mirror with such intense focus that it felt like he was trying to bend reality with his mind. But his hard work went far beyond the dance floor. As the leader, RM carried a psychological burden that would have crushed most adults, let alone a young man in his early 20s. He was the bridge between the high-pressure demands of Bang Si-hyuk and the raw, often exhausted emotions of the other 6 members. He had to be the translator of their shared vision, the diplomat in the room, and the shield against the vitriol of the early idol rapper haters. Bang PD has often shared how Namjoon would bring him notebooks filled with hundreds of pages of lyrics, not just songs that made it to the albums, but thousands of scrapped verses, discarded metaphors, and reconstructed thoughts. This wasn't just writing, it was an exhaustive intellectual labor to find the perfect voice for a generation. When the world started watching, the pressure intensified. Think about the mental grind of learning English not just to speak, but to represent an entire nation and culture on the world's biggest stages, like the UN or the Grammys. Bang Si-hyuk tells how Namjoon would study during the tiny gaps between their impossible schedules, in the back of vans, on long-haul flights where others were sleeping, and in makeup chairs. He wasn't just memorizing phrases, he was studying the nuances of Western thoughts so he could protect his members in interviews. There's a specific memory Bang PD has from the Wings era where RM stayed up for 3 days straight to finalize the concept of Demian for their album, refusing to eat or sleep until the philosophical depth of the music matched the complexity of their growth.
His work ethic is characterized by a restless perfectionism that makes him his own harshest critic. Even after a sold-out stadium show, while others were celebrating, RM would often be found in his hotel room, hunched over his laptop, working on a melody or a lyric for the next project. This invisible grind, the constant thinking, the constant leading, the constant self-correction, is what Bang PD considers the most exhausting type of hard work. He had to grow up faster than anyone else, sacrificing his own youth to ensure the group stayed together and stayed focused. The emotional toll of being the person everyone looks to for answers cannot be overstated. Bang PD remembers moments of deep vulnerability where RM would ask if he was doing enough, despite being the one who literally put the group on his back during their global expansion. His transformation from a self-conscious underground rapper into a confident, world-class diplomat and performer is a testament to a decade of choosing the hard way every single time. He didn't just learn to dance, he mastered the art of being a performer. He didn't just write songs, he crafted a message that saved lives. The atmosphere in those late-night sessions was thick with the scent of old coffee and the hum of computer monitors, a silent war against his own limitations. Bang PD believes that RM's greatest work isn't a single song, but the fact that he never let the crown slip, despite how heavy it became. He turned his insecurities into anthems and his physical struggles into a graceful power. At number 5, RM proves that leadership isn't just about being in front, it's about being the one who works the hardest when the lights are off to ensure everyone else can shine when they're on. Doesn't it make you wonder what kind of mental fortitude it takes to be the voice of millions while you're still trying to find your own? How many of us would have the discipline to study a new language and philosophy while our bodies were screaming for rest? RM's grind is a masterclass in intellectual and emotional endurance, a reminder that the most powerful engine of success is a mind that refuses to stop.
Number 4. Suga, the silent producer, a soul forged in ice and iron. Entering the top 4 is the man whose life story reads like a gritty, noir film about survival and the relentless pursuit of a dream against all odds, the sharp-tongued poet and sonic architect, Min Yoongi. Bang Si-hyuk often speaks about Suga with a specific kind of reverence, almost as if he's talking about a fellow soldier who survived a war that no one else saw. When Yoongi first arrived in Seoul from Daegu, he wasn't looking for fame. He was looking for a way to survive through music, and that survival instinct translated into a work ethic that Bang PD describes as pure, unadulterated desperation turned into genius. Imagine a teenager working part-time delivery jobs in the freezing rain just to pay for a bowl of noodles, then heading to a cramped studio to compose tracks until the sun came up. Bang Si-hyuk recalls the moment he realized Yoongi was different. It was when he discovered that Suga had been hiding a devastating shoulder injury sustained during a delivery accident. He was practicing the most intense choreography in kpop history, Danger and We Are Bulletproof Part 2, with a torn labrum, his arm literally going numb, yet he never complained once to the staff. He was so terrified that if he showed weakness, Big Hit would let him go, and he'd have to return to a life of poverty. This psychological scarcity mindset fueled a grind that Bang PB says was almost painful to watch. While other members were resting, Suga was locked in his genius lab, a space that was both a sanctuary and a self-imposed prison. Bang Si-hyuk remembers receiving track files from Yoongi at 5 a.m., 6 a.m., and 7 a.m., day after day, year after year. It wasn't just about writing songs, it was about a man who felt like he was running out of time. The sheer volume of his output is staggering. For every song that made it onto a BTS album, Bang PD reveals there are hundreds, if not thousands, of ghost tracks in Suga's archives that the world will never hear. He worked so hard that his health became a secondary concern, leading to a level of burnout that he eventually channeled into his August D persona.
Si-hyuk has often reflected on the interlude Shadow era, where Suga's lyrics about the fear of the height they had reached were a direct result of his mental exhaustion. He was the one who would stay in the studio during the group's rare holidays, perfecting the snare sound on a track or rewriting a single verse for the 50th time because good enough didn't exist in his vocabulary. There's a specific, haunting detail Bang PD shared about the Wings tour. The staff found Suga curled up under a table in the dressing room, trying to catch 10 minutes of sleep because he had stayed up the entire night before, finishing a production for another artist while simultaneously prepping for a 3-hour concert. This isn't just hard work, it's a pathological refusal to stop. His dedication to his craft is so intense that it borders on the religious. Bang Si-hyuk notes that Suga's contribution to the group isn't just his rapping or producing, it's his role as the realist who works behind the scenes to ensure the group's musical integrity never wavers. He took the idol label, which he initially resisted, and worked 10 times harder than any pure hip-hop artist to prove that he could dominate both worlds. The atmospheric tension of his early days, the smell of cheap instant coffee, the flickering blue light of a computer monitor in a basement with no windows, and the constant dull throb of a shoulder that wouldn't heal is the true origin story of the superstar we see today. Bang PD believes that Suga's grind is fueled by a fear of the basement, a memory of where he came from that keeps him from ever slowing down. Even after undergoing major surgery in 2020, his first thought wasn't about rest, it was about how quickly he could get back to his equipment. He is the man who turned his pain into a currency and his exhaustion into a masterpiece. Every time you hear a Suga or a Gust D track, you're hearing the literal exhaustion of a man who gave up his youth and his physical health to ensure his voice was heard. At number 4, Suga is a reminder that the most beautiful music often comes from the most punishing labor, and his silent, gritty endurance is the backbone of the BTS legacy. It makes you wonder, if you were in his shoes, would you have the strength to hide your pain for years just to protect your brother's dreams? How much of yourself would you be willing to sacrifice to ensure you never have to go back to the bottom? Suga's story is a raw, emotional testament to the fact that talent is just the starting line. It's the grind that crosses the finish line. Number 3. J-Hope, the perfectionist general, the iron soul behind the smile. Stepping into the top 3, we encounter the man who serves as the literal heartbeat of BTS's performance, the legendary dance captain and the sun that never sets, Jungkook. While the world sees J-Hope as the sunshine of the group, the one who radiates positivity and keeps the energy high, Bang Si-hyuk has often pulled back the curtain on a much more intense, almost frightening side of his personality that few fans truly grasp. Bang PD describes J-Hope not just as a dancer, but as a perfectionist general whose work ethic is so sharp it could cut through steel. When Hoseok first arrived from Gwangju as a champion street dancer, he already possessed a level of skill that was light years ahead of the other trainees. Yet instead of resting on his laurels, he worked as if he was the one at the bottom. Bang Si-hyuk recalls the early years in the cramped, humid basement of the old Big Hit building, where the air was so thick with the smell of sweat and floor wax that it was hard to breathe. In that suffocating environment, J-Hope wasn't just practicing for himself, he was effectively acting as a second performance director. Bang PD vividly remembers watching through the monitors as J-Hope would lead the group through 10-hour rehearsals, his eyes transforming from their usual warmth into something cold, analytical, and relentless. If a single member was off by even half a centimeter, or if a finger wasn't pointed at the exact same angle as the others, J-Hope would stop the music. The silence that followed was often more terrifying than any criticism from the staff. He didn't just work hard, he carried the physical and mental burden of ensuring 7 different bodies moved as a single flawless machine. Bang Si-hyuk has noted that J-Hope's dedication is dual-layered. There's the physical grind of mastering choreography that pushes the human body to its limits, and then there's the emotional grind of being the bridge between the choreography team and the members. There were nights when J-Hope was so physically spent that his joints would swell and he'd have to ice his knees for hours, yet he would be the first one in the studio the next morning at 6 a.m. to review the previous day's footage. Bang PD recalls the Boy Meets Evil era as a turning point that showcased J-Hope's frightening level of commitment. To prepare for that solo trailer, Hoseok spent months in a darkened practice room, practicing movements so fluid and demanding that they looked like they belonged in a contemporary art gallery rather than a pop music video. He would record himself from every possible angle, obsessing over the way the light hit his shadow, refusing to eat or sleep until the vibe was exactly what he envisioned. Bang Si-hyuk has often said that while RM is the leader of the group's mind, J-Hope is the leader of their discipline. He is the one who sets the temperature of the room. If J-Hope is focused, the entire building feels it. There's a specific memory Bang PD shared about the blood, sweat, and tears rehearsals where the group was reaching a breaking point of exhaustion during a world tour. While others were catching a few minutes of rest on the floor, J-Hope was standing in front of the mirror, perfectly still, visualizing the entire set list in his head, his hands twitching slightly as he ran through every count. This level of mental rehearsal is what separates a star from a legend. Bang PD also reflects on the psychological cost of J-Hope's sunshine persona. He worked twice as hard to keep his own frustrations and fatigue hidden so he could continue to be the emotional battery for his brothers. He sacrificed his own moments of rest to help Jin and RM master the complex footwork that didn't come naturally to them, essentially working double shifts, once for himself and once for the group. The atmospheric tension of those late-night sessions, the rhythmic thumping of sneakers on the floor, the reflection of a man who refused to see anything but perfection in the mirror, and the silent, heavy responsibility of carrying the group's standard is the true story of Jungkook. Bang Si-hyuk believes that without J-Hope's iron-fisted discipline, BTS would never have achieved that legendary knife-like synchronization that made them a global phenomenon. He is the silent engine that keeps the machine running at 200%, the man who turned his passion into a professional duty that borders on the sacred. Every time you see J-Hope smile on stage, remember the thousands of hours he spent in the dark, pushing his body past the point of failure, just to ensure that the hope he gives to the fans is backed by the most rigorous labor imaginable. At number 3, J-Hope proves that being the best isn't about natural talent. It's about being the person who is willing to stay in the room the longest, even when the lights have gone out and the music has stopped. It makes you wonder, could you maintain that level of intensity every single day for over a decade without ever letting the mask slip? How much of your own comfort would you give up to ensure that those around you succeed? J-Hope's grind is a masterclass in professional excellence and self-sacrifice, a reminder that true leadership is often found in the quiet, punishing work that happens when no one is cheering. He is the iron soul of BTS, and his place in the top 3 is a testament to a man who truly gave his blood, sweat, and tears to the stage.
Number 2. Jimin, the soul of perseverance, when perfection becomes a dangerous obsession. At number 2, we reach a level of dedication that is almost frightening to describe, centering on the man who redefined the very meaning of blood, sweat, and tears, the graceful yet fiercely determined Park Jimin. When Bang Si-hyuk looks back at the history of Big Hit, he often speaks of Jimin with a mixture of pride and a lingering sense of concern. Because Jimin's work ethic wasn't just about being good, it was a relentless, almost painful war against his own perceived limitations. Imagine being a young boy from Busan, a top student in contemporary dance, suddenly thrown into a world of aggressive hip-hop and sharp synchronized idol choreography. While his background gave him grace, it didn't give him the groove that the K-pop world demanded at the time, and Jimin knew it.
Bang PD recalls that during his trainee days, Jimin was plagued by a crushing sense of inadequacy that drove him to a lifestyle that would have broken anyone else. While the other trainees were heading back to the dorms to catch 5 or 6 hours of sleep, Jimin would stay in the practice room until 4 or 5 a.m., only to return at 6 a.m. He was surviving on a staggering 2 hours of sleep a day for nearly a year. Bang Si-hyuk has often shared the story of how Jimin was actually on the brink of being cut from the final lineup, not once, not twice, but 8 separate times. The reason? His style was too different, and there were doubts about whether he could adapt. But every time his name came up for elimination, Jimin would respond not with words, but with a level of improvement that was physically impossible. Bang PD remembers walking into the building in the dead of night and hearing the muffled sound of music coming from the basement. It was always Jimin, drenched in so much sweat that the floor around him became a slipping hazard. He would practice a single turn, a single jump, or a single vocal run until his body literally gave out. This wasn't just hard work, it was a man fighting for his life. The psychological pressure of being the last member to join created a deep-seated fear in him that he had to be perfect just to belong. Bang Si-hyuk has reflected on the blood, sweat, and tears era, which is often cited as Jimin's peak visual and performance moment. But behind that seductive, polished image was a man who was pushing himself to the brink of physical collapse. He famously followed a diet so restrictive, eating only 1 meal every 10 days at one point, just to achieve a specific, sharp look for the cameras. Bang PD has since expressed how much the staff worried about his health, yet Jimin's internal fire was so intense that no one could tell him to slow down. He was his own most brutal critic. If he hit a slightly flat note during a rehearsal, he would spend the next 3 hours in the vocal room, his voice cracking and straining until he mastered the frequency. There's a specific haunting detail from the Wings tour where the camera caught Jimin backstage, gasping for air and nearly fainting after his solo Lie, yet the moment the lights hit the stage again, he transformed back into a flawless, ethereal being. This ability to mask extreme physical pain with artistic beauty is what Bang Si-hyuk calls the Jimin magic, but it's a magic bought with an astronomical price of labor. Even his members have admitted they were scared of how hard he worked. J-Hope once said that Jimin's passion made the rest of them feel like they weren't doing enough. Bang PD remembers Jimin coming to him with tears in his eyes, asking if he was good enough even after they had won their first daesong. This vulnerability is what fueled his grind. He never felt like he had arrived, so he never stopped running. The atmospheric tension of his life during those peak years was one of constant high-stakes evaluation, the cold light of the practice mirror reflecting a boy who refused to see his own genius, only his flaws. He would record his practice dances and watch them in slow motion, frame by frame, analyzing the angle of his pinky finger or the way his hair fell across his eyes. This level of meticulousness is why he became the filter that can adapt to any concept, but the cost was a youth spent in a basement battling the ghost of not being good enough. Bang Si-hyuk believes that Jimin's journey is the ultimate testament of human will. He wasn't born an idol, he carved himself into one using his own soul as the chisel. The smell of the humid practice room, the stinging of salt in his eyes from sweat, and the solitary sound of his breathing in an empty building at dawn, these are the elements that built the legend of Park Jimin. He is the man who turned his insecurity into a superpower, proving that if you are willing to sacrifice everything, you can become something truly divine. At number 2, Jimin stands as the peak of traditional hard work, a man who literally bled for his craft and changed the standards of the entire industry. It makes you wonder, if you were told no 8 times, would you have the heart to keep dancing until your feet bled? How much of your own health would you trade for a single moment of perfection on stage? Jimin's story is a beautiful, tragic, and ultimately triumphant epic of a boy who refused to be left behind. But if Jimin, with his 2 hours of sleep and legendary discipline, is only number 2, who on earth could possibly take the top spot? The answer from Bang Si-hyuk is someone whose work ethic is so deep and so constant that it has become as natural as breathing, and the reason for their ranking will leave you speechless.
Number 1, Jungkook, the eternal engine, the boy who sacrificed his youth to become a god.
And finally, we reach the summit of our list. The name that Bang Si-hyuk reveals with a look of profound awe and almost a fatherly heavy-heartedness, the golden maknae, Jungkook. You might find it shocking. You might think, wait, isn't Jungkook the one who is just naturally good at everything? But that is exactly why his position at number 1 is the most shocking and perhaps the most heartbreaking revelation of all. Bang PD explains that the world sees the golden result, but they are blind to the industrial process that created it. Imagine being a 15-year-old boy, still carrying the soft features of a child, leaving your family in Busan to live in a cramped dorm with strangers in a city that felt like another planet. While most teenagers were worrying about school exams or their first crush, Jungkook was in a basement carrying the terrifying weight of being the center of a group that was Big Hit's last hope. Bang Si-hyuk recalls a memory that still haunts the early days of the company. A young, incredibly shy Jungkook who would literally burst into tears if he was asked to sing in front of people. He was so introverted that he would wait for the other members to fall asleep before he would shower or eat, just to avoid the gaze of others. How does a boy like that become the most confident performer on the planet? Bang PD says the answer is a level of compulsive labor that defies human logic. When Jungkook went to Los Angeles for dance training before their debut, something in him snapped. He didn't just learn to dance, he became obsessed with the mechanics of movement. Bang Si-hyuk recalls receiving videos from the US where Jungkook was practicing in the sweltering heat for 12 hours straight, his shirt so soaked it looked like he had jumped into a pool. He wasn't just working hard, he was rebuilding his entire identity through sweat. But the real reason Bang PD puts him at number 1 is the Golden Maknae title itself. This title, which sounds like a compliment, became Jungkook's heaviest chain. He felt that if he wasn't the best at singing, dancing, rapping, and even sports or painting, he was failing his youngs and the fans. This psychological drive created a monster of work ethic. Bang Si-hyuk has often shared how Jungkook doesn't have an off switch. There are countless stories from music video sets, from Dope to Idol to Seven, where the director has yelled cut and the other members have collapsed in exhaustion, yet Jungkook is off in a corner, repeating the choreography he just finished, asking the staff if he can see the playback to find even a millisecond of imperfection. Bang PD recalls the Seven era in 2023, where Jungkook was flying across time zones, performing on global stages while battling severe colds and physical depletion. In London, he was so sick he could barely stand, yet he refused to lip-sync, practicing his vocal runs in the dressing room until the very second he walked on stage. Bang Si-hyuk says he has never seen a human being with a higher threshold for pain and fatigue. Jungkook's work isn't a task, it's his entire existence. He essentially gave up his childhood, his adolescence, and his privacy to become the perfect idol. There's a specific, quiet detail Bang PD noted about Jungkook's vocal practice. He doesn't just sing, he records himself, listens back, deletes it, and repeats the process for 6 hours straight just for a single line of a song. He has been known to stay in the recording booth until 6 a.m., long after the producers have fallen asleep on the couch, because he felt his soul didn't come through in a specific note. This isn't just talent, it's a terrifying, beautiful obsession. Bang Si-hyuk believes that Jungkook is the hardest worker because he carries the expectations of 6 older brothers on his shoulders every time he steps into the center spot. He feels he has to be the strongest because he is the youngest. The atmospheric reality of Jungkook's life is one of constant, high-speed motion, the blur of airport terminals, the blinding glare of stadium lights, and the solitary, silent hours in the gym at 2 a.m. because that's the only time he has left to keep his body in peak condition. He is a man who has lived his entire life under a microscope, and his response was to become so perfect that the microscope couldn't find a flaw. Bang PD once said that Jungkook is the soul of BTS's ambition. He is the one who proves that even the most naturally gifted person in the room can also be the one who works the hardest. Every time you see him fly across a stage or hit a high note while doing a backflip, you aren't seeing talent. You are seeing a decade of missed sleep, a decade of self-criticism, and a decade of a boy choosing to be a legend instead of a normal person. At number 1, Jungkook isn't just the golden maknae, he is the ultimate testament to what happens when you decide that good enough is an insult. Si-hyuk's revelation reminds us that the brightest stars burn the most fuel, and Jungkook has been burning his own youth as fuel for BTS since he was a child. It's a shocking, emotional reality that makes you look at his smile differently. Does it make you wonder what it feels like to have the world call you perfect when you know exactly how many thousands of hours of pain it took to earn that word? How would your life change if you pursued your passion with the same all-or-nothing intensity as a 15-year-old who refused to go home until he was the best in the world? Jungkook's journey is a masterclass in total self-dedication, a reminder that the top spot isn't given, it's forged in the hottest fire imaginable. This concludes our deep dive into Si-hyuk's revelations about the incredible work ethic of BTS. Each member brought a different kind of fire to the table, but together they created a sun that changed the world. Would you like me to create a summary of these 7 legends, or perhaps analyze the specific leadership style of Si-hyuk that allowed these talents to flourish?
As the echoes of the music fade and the stage lights dim on this countdown, we are left with a profound realization that shatters the illusion of the effortless superstar. What Si-hyuk revealed through these rankings isn't just a list of names or a hierarchy of effort. It is a raw, psychological map of what it truly costs to change the world. We often look at BTS and see the purple ocean, the record-breaking charts, and the flawless choreography. But through Bang PD's eyes, we've seen the shivering trainee in a cold basement, the boy who cried because he was too shy to sing, and the man who starved himself for 10 days just to look perfect for us. This journey from number 7 to number 1 isn't just a story about K-pop. It is a masterclass in the human spirit's capacity to endure, adapt, and overcome. It's about the silent hours between 2 a.m. and 5 a.m. that the world never sees, the hours where legends are actually made. Si-hyuk's narrative teaches us that greatness isn't a destination you arrive at because you were born with a map. It's a path you carve out of solid rock with your own bare hands, often while bleeding and exhausted. Each member of BTS represents a different facet of the grind. Jin's resilience against lack of experience, V's battle with being hidden, RM's intellectual weight, Suga's survival instinct, J-Hope's iron discipline, Jimin's beautiful obsession, and finally, Jungkook's total sacrifice of youth. When you combine these 7 distinct fires, you don't just get a boy band, you get a sun that provides heat and light to millions of people who feel lost in the dark. Bang PD didn't just manage artists, he mentored warriors who were willing to face their own shadows to bring music and healing to others. The shock of the top spot, seeing the golden one as the hardest worker, serves as a powerful reminder that natural talent is never an excuse to stop working. In fact, for those at the top, it's often the reason they work 10 times harder. It's a sobering reflection for all of us. As you look at your own dreams and your own daily struggles, ask yourself, which of these 7 paths am I walking today? Are you the underdog like Jin, or are you the perfectionist like Jimin? The legacy of BTS, as revealed by the man who saw it all from the beginning, is that there is no such thing as a shortcut to the stars. There is only the work. There is only the choice to get up one more time than you fall. Si-hyuk's final reflection is one of deep gratitude, not for the money or the fame, but for the honor of witnessing 7 ordinary boys turn themselves into extraordinary men through nothing but pure, unyielding willpower. As this documentary-style journey ends, let the sweat, the tears, and the relentless drive of these 7 individuals be the fuel for your own fire.
Because if a shy boy from Busan can become the engine of a global revolution, and a student with no musical background can become a global icon, then perhaps the only thing standing between you and your own #1 moment is the willingness to stay in the room when everyone else has gone home. The curtain falls, but the grind never ends. Thank you for walking through the shadows of the practice room with us to find the light of the stage. Until next time, keep dreaming, keep working, and remember, your own golden era is waiting just on the other side of your hardest day. Would you like me to create a detailed survival guide inspired by these BTS work ethics to help you tackle your own personal goals?